Ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, I would like to give you my full analysis, both legal and political, on the Chauvin verdict. First and foremost, my big question at the time that I am recording this, which is on Wednesday morning at about 9:30, is will we actually hear from the jurors? I forget whether the judge said they're allowed to talk to the public, not talk to the public or not. It's common for jurors to be allowed. So my first big question is, what will the jurors tell us? What will the jurors tell us about the process? However, I want everybody to know that a 9-hour deliberation on that big of a case is rather short. And for them to convict him on all three charges that quickly, I don't think it was a hard decision for this jury. It will be interesting. Were there one or two jurors that maybe had some doubts or not? Number two, sentencing. It appears from what the judge said after the conviction is that Minnesota does it a lot like Ohio and Kentucky, which is after this conviction, they do a pre-sentence investigation to decide what the parameters are for punishment. He faces up to 45 years in jail for all these charges. Will he get that? Probably not. I think that's going to be the next big protest is this judge, what kind of pressure will the judge be under? Looks like he'll stand up to it, to what will be the length of the sentence. That'll be the next big controversy. A pre-sentence investigation, what they do is they check out everything about his background. You know, what are mitigating factors? What are factors that call for a more severe punishment? Everything I've heard about this guy, he seemed to be like a loner and, quote unquote, a little bit out of control. So that's going to be the next situation. Sentencing said, I think they said in 8 weeks. The appeal. There will absolutely, obviously, be an appeal. That appeal will happen after the sentencing phase. He obviously will not be let out during his appeal. Here's something that I think is going to be interesting. Appeals have to be what is in the record. You know, unless you sit there and you watch every part of the trial, you don't know what was in the record, not in the record, so forth and so on. As a defense attorney or a plaintiff's attorney or any attorney, you have to make sure you make a record for your appeal, even on a case that you think you're going to win, because you never know. It's going to be real interesting is how the appeals court will handle the judge's comments about Maxine Waters and others, where he called this was abhorrent, how they will deal with that and what Eric Nelson, his attorney, did to make sure that that was preserved on appeal. For example, was there a request and did there need to be a request to actually question each juror about that? So that's going to be interesting. I have to make a comment about this. Joe Biden actually called the family in the middle of jury deliberations. Said he hopes he get it right. Beyond improper. Maxine Waters goes there the day before the verdict and stirs it up. Says if there's a not guilty verdict, there needs to be more confrontation. This jury was not sequestered, which means they went home every night. Although they're told not to listen and watch, what do you think happens? Nancy Pelosi and her comments. I mean, all of it before the verdict, very improper. However, their comments afterwards are equally crazy. Nancy Pelosi, I mean, acted like, George Floyd, sacrificed himself. The words that she used, just ridiculous. My next point is there is a separation of powers in this country, each state and our federal government. Executive branch, legislative branch, judiciary. I am blown away how the legislative branch in each state and in this country, Congress, wants to meddle the way they want to meddle in the executive branch and the judiciary. And folks, I just want to say this. Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, and all of them had absolutely nothing to do with the process that went on in Minneapolis in that courtroom. That was that judge and that county's show, that state's show, prosecuted out of the Attorney General's office. It was their show. It was not Congress's show. And they act like they want to put their nose into everything these days. Now, I'm putting up the American Communist 10. The American Communist 10. Now, just think about how the American Communist 10, each one of them, speak about what went down from day one with George Floyd all the way up through till today. Just think about how each of them handle it. What they say, how they say it, what they want out of it, how they use it. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Look at that list. What do any of them say or do that is productive after the George Floyd incident in this trial? Nothing. And I'm going to get to that more. Fear. We don't know how it might have affected the jury or not, but it doesn't make any difference. We know that American Communist 10 wanted to spread fear. They want to keep the fear going in this entire country. How wrong is that? How wrong? It's very wrong. Here's a big point. America agreed. The entire country, after what happened to George Floyd, we all came out and said that was wrong. After the verdict, it's wrong. Does anybody disagree with the verdict? You might say, well, it wasn't murder. It shouldn't have been third, second, or first. But everybody, you look at the law from the jury instructions and the facts, who disagrees that police officer didn't play a part in the death of George Floyd? America agreed. But guess what? My next point, it doesn't matter. Rather than the whole country come together like we could have, the American Communist 10 wanted to use George Floyd's death for more. In fact, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? It's almost like they act like we're not allowed to agree with what happened. It's not if you're like a white person, wait a minute, this is not your situation here. You don't have any part to play in this thing. The George Floyd death could have been used as a unification of this country. But the American Communist 10 don't want it to be used to come together as a country. And what are they all saying afterwards? AOC, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, that this isn't justice. There's still more justice. This is done. You see, because they don't want the verdict to be the end. They don't want it. Not justice. Folks, I got to ask you something about not justice. $27 million paid by a liberal Democratic city to that family. Folks, I know this field of law. That case wasn't worth $27 million. That was a completely political payout. That is called civil justice. It's the only thing you can get from the civil justice system is money. They got $27 million. They got a conviction on the 3 charges that were brought. That's called criminal justice. That family got civil justice. They got criminal justice. And yet, the American Communist 10, nope, we got to keep this going. It can't be over with that settlement and that verdict. No. It cannot be over. My point is, it's never enough. Never enough. Nor will it'll just never be enough. Now, my next, second last point that I want to make here today is what is ignored by the American Communist 10. And all these people, Al Sharpton, everybody gathers around the microphone. Everybody wants a piece of this action. Remember what they did to his casket? They put him in a casket and he went on tour. George Floyd went on tour in a casket. Police killings. What do the American Communist 10 and all the people who are behind that microphone speaking out that this is injustice, what have any of them said about any of the police killings that go on every day? Nothing. Don't say anything about it. What do all of them say about the black-on-black crime epidemic in this country, particularly, obviously, in Chicago? What do all these people talking about justice? Nothing. What else do they ignore? The destruction in the cities, the riots, the destruction, the looting, all of that. What do they say? Nothing. They ignore that. The civil criminal new reality is that if you're a black person in America, you now have, in dealing with the criminal justice system, every state, the federal government, everything else, is you get treated, it's like 180 degrees the other way. And by the way, remember the old expression, 2 wrongs don't make a right? 2 wrongs don't make a right. But just think about that. These social justice warriors, these warriors for the police, they ignore all these other things. Why? How? What rational American, how does a rational American think like that? Only they think like that. Only the American Communist 10. Last but not least, racism. They are all, the American Communist 10, and everything they say and do about all this, to make my final point, are the biggest racists, some of the biggest racists this country has ever seen since the Civil War, since antebellum times. I mean, no question. What's racism? What's racism? Racism, is it not, being biased and prejudiced towards a race, being mean and cruel and mistreating them, treating them bad and wrong. Apply that to what's going on in this country. Who's doing that now? Are you and I doing that? No. It's those people that are shouting. What's that thing in psychology called transference? It's the ones that are shouting the racism the most are racists. They're the ones, and why? They need to keep that alive for politics. They need to keep that for their political base in the big cities. They have to keep racism alive. How sick is that? Half this country, the political leadership of half this country, needs racism to be kept alive. Barack Obama used it. They've been using it ever since. It is the card, and the American Communist 10 perpetuates it. This is the Bulldog. Every dog has their day. The George Floyd family got a double dose of justice. Money, conviction across the board. But you know what? It'll never be enough because of the political gangsters. This is the Bulldog. Every dog has their day. Have a great day.